It's incredible what the path does in a 118-year-old system. It carries over 200,000 people a day, just a day. That, when the path was created, was about the population of Jersey City every day, 4 times today's Hoboken's current population every day. It is an incredible workhorse of moving people in our region and through Hudson County. So excited to be able to talk a little bit today with the experts from the Port Authority about the PATH experience, about the PATH service. And joining us today, we have Jim Heitman, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the entire Port Authority, Raisha, who is the Superintendent of Transportation at PATH and makes it run and keeps the system working, Morgan Keene, who's the Director of Customer Experience Strategy for the Port Authority, which is incredible to have a public organization that has a group focused on the customer experience, and Rebecca, who is the Assistant Director for Passenger Services and the Customer Experience within PATH. So if you guys want to just take a moment and introduce yourselves a little bit better than I did, I would love to kind of share your expertise with the room. So Jim?
Thank you. And thanks for having us, and thanks for coming out on a Saturday. So Jim Heitman, Chief Operating Officer. I joined the Port Authority almost 40 years ago. Went to school here in Stevens. So I'm a New Jersey local, and I started out as a mechanical engineer, then moved to aviation for a fair amount of time, and then operations at Newark, maintenance. And then I went into the major airport redevelopment projects for about 10 years, and until I took this job, just coming up on 3 years soon. And what attracted to me about the Port Authority was, the Port Authority literally wrote the book on transportation and a lot of things and built a lot of iconic infrastructure. So for an engineer, it was kind of a really great opportunity to come and play with cool stuff. So that's kind of my story.
Good morning. My name is Raisha Haynes. I am the Superintendent of PATH. Thank you all for having me here today. So more than 20 years ago, PATH began as an opportunity for me. I had relocated to Jersey City, and like I said, it was an opportunity. However, the opportunity turned into purpose for me. Having grown up in Jersey City, having started as a frontline employee, I understand the purpose that PATH has to the communities that we serve. In addition to that, I think that being able to serve the community is more about just moving trains. It's also about meeting people where they are and also ensuring we serve their needs.
Hi, I'm Morgan Kane. As Andy said, I'm the Program Director of Customer Experience Strategy for the agency. So I work with customer experience teams throughout the Port Authority, so in aviation, in PATH, and at the bus terminal, et cetera. And I'm really excited to be here today. I see a lot of friendly faces in the room. I know we've heard a lot about PATH from you over the last couple of years and appreciate that advocacy. And that's what I like about my job. Like Raisha, I really think about what the Port Authority does is we're not just moving things or moving vehicles, we're moving people. And your day can be, make or break your day if the PATH is running well or not. And I know that as a Jersey City resident, and that's why I want to work with everyone here and this amazing team to make sure that we're serving the region, we're serving the customers like you that depend on us.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Reel. I actually started my career as an urban high school history teacher, so I have a lot of appreciation for what mass transit does for communities and how important it is to connect everyone across multiple sectors. I came to the Port Authority as a leadership fellow, so I encourage if there's any graduate students out there to check that program out. And I've been at PATH for almost 10 years. And in my role, I oversee not only the customer experience, but also the revenue operations. So there's a lot, the day-to-day. We love being out in the field. I lived in downtown Jersey City for about 7 years, so PATH was my bread and butter way to get around. And it's been an honor for the past several years to work with this group and be out in the community to hear what your experiences are and your priorities when it comes to riding PATH and how we can improve.
Thank you. So let's just take a moment and welcome our incredible panel, please. Thank you. So we're here today to kind of do two things. I think the first and most important one is to celebrate. Not that long ago, the Port Authority announced in response to the Hudson County Complete Streets campaign and in partnership working together, the All Lines, All Days initiative to significantly increase the service, which is a major pain point, I know, for many folks in Hudson County. So we're here to celebrate that, but also to talk about the future, because I think Hudson County Complete Streets is very appreciative, but also wants to continue to know how we can continue to partner and grow and improve transit service for the county. And on that note, growth. You know, underpinning and surrounding the system, Hudson County has grown its population in double digits in the last 15 years, 22% in Jersey City. We're addressing a housing regional need, concern, and a lot of that growth is happening. And that density of housing needs to mirror the density of mobility so people can get around, things like mass transit. But it's continuing. In the next 25 years, Jersey City is expected to grow another 25%. So what are some of the challenges that the Port Authority and you guys see in addressing that growing ridership demand?
Thank you. So the one thing that we see, Hudson County is continuing to grow, as you stated. The key challenge for PATH is going to be about meeting that demand during our peak periods. So if you look back to 2019, prior to COVID, we were averaging 81 million riders annually, and back in 2010, we were about at 73 million. So we were already seeing that prior to COVID. When you look post-COVID, our ridership right now is about 75% of that. So with that said, our passengers felt the trend, and we understand you, we hear you. With our Path Forward construction over this past March, we made service improvements. Those improvements started out focusing on the weekends, where you were able to see we were operating trains every 10 minutes from Journal Square via Hoboken on the weekends. Coming up in May, as previously stated, we'll be introducing Every Line Every Day. So Every Line Every Day introduces all 4 of our service lines. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So that Every Line Every Day is about all 4 service lines operating on the weekends. Journal Square to 33rd will be at 10-minute headway, a 10-minute frequency, as well as Hoboken to 33rd. In addition, you'll have access to Hoboken to World Trade, first time in over 2 decades, and Newark to World Trade as well, 20-minute headway as well. But going back to what our biggest challenges will be, it's definitely going to be the rush hour. PATH carries our highest level of riders during our peak periods. And knowing that, we have made investments into our infrastructure. We introduced an increased car fleet. That car fleet allowed us to operate 9 cars on the Newark to World Trade service line, which gave us new additional capacity. In addition to that, we extended our platforms to support that program. Other enhancements that have been made were really focused on the track. The Path Forward and Path Forward program allowed us to improve our reliability. So coming out of the program, in addition to the weekend enhancements, we did make enhancements to our peak hours, and those enhancements in March were around Hoboken to World Trade, where you were able to see trains frequencies go to a 6-minute headway during the AM periods. There will be more peak enhancements coming next year, but there is a keen awareness that our biggest challenge is going to be around the rush hour as the population continues to grow.
Thank you. Thank you, Raisha. I I think the next question I'll ask directed to you, Rebecca. In 2025, PATH conducted an extensive rider survey. Can you share 3 takeaways from that survey with people here today?
Yes, happy to.
Oh, try it again.
I'll try again. There we
Excellent.
go. Okay, yes, happy to. So yes, we run many surveys throughout the year to get rider feedback. Some of them focus on just what your last experience was riding PATH, and then the one that Andy's referencing is we do an extensive relationship survey twice a year where we ask riders to reflect on your last 6 months of riding PATH so we can get a lot of data and understand what your patterns and trends are that you're experiencing. We actually have our latest survey live right now if you are getting PATH alerts, or you maybe see it in however you get your PATH information, so we encourage everyone to take it. And the 3 main data points that we did get from that survey, and we got over 1,600 responses, is confirming that the investments we're making into PATH continue to be aligned with what passengers want. So the first takeaway, no surprise here, was that reliability, crowding, and train frequency really matter the most to our riders, and that's where the request is for the biggest improvements. So I think that speaks volumes to the every line, every day improvements that we'll be making over the next few years. And the next big point also was that customers want timely, actionable information when PATH has a delay or an incident. And we hear this, it is important, and we're taking short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions really to make improvements. Sometimes it's hard to make the biggest changes overnight, but a few ways that you may have noticed we are trying now to improve our communications is we are trying to be much more upfront when we have information on a delay. You may have noticed recently, if we know that a delay will last a long time, maybe through rush hour, for example, we're trying to put that out there so that you can make informed travel decisions. We don't always know. Sometimes we know there's an incident or a delay. We'll send the experts out. They'll go take a look. Maybe it's a different cause than we thought, or there's a secondary condition. So it can make it challenging to give a timeline to a delay, but it's something that we are trying to improve upon. And then medium term too, again, when it comes to information, we look at different platforms that we have to reach our customers. One of the things we're doing is procuring a new messaging platform contract. Right now we use Everbridge. That's a little bit of a challenge because there's a character limit. A lot of government and municipalities use it, but that's why you kind of have to be in the know on the PATH lingo if you rely on our PATH alerts, because we use a lot of abbreviations. We're trying to squeeze a lot of information into a small character count, which can be frustrating because we know a lot of riders, sometimes myself included, will just get the notification on your phone and you don't have time maybe to click into the link to get all of the information. And then longer term too, the Port Authority's capital program includes new projects to replace the PATH vision screens. Those are those old fuzzy digital screens in our stations. We try to make them work the best we can, but they are beyond their useful life, so they're going to get replaced. And then finally, there's a project also to replace the public address systems in our stations, because we know, depending on which station and where you stand, it can be really difficult to hear the announcements that we're making. And those are live announcements, so we're making it right in our control center so that you do have the up-to-date information, but it's sometimes hard to hear. So again, short, medium, and long-term impacts are on their way to help improve that point. And then the third biggest point that survey showed us is that station condition and accessibility also remain very important to our customers. And again, I think that speaks a lot to the station rehabs that we've been undergoing for the past several years. Grove, Hoboken, Exchange Place all got a facelift. Newport's getting one now. Newport's taking a little more work. There's a lot of waterproofing work that has to go on there, and the station rehab is coming, so that's going to be next. And then accessibility, the Port Authority does have an accessibility roadmap that they are committed to looking at for more longer-term plans. So we hear you. Those survey responses were, aligned with the other CX data points that we do collect and seriously analyze. And, we're happy to take steps. Just we ask for some patience because, again, sometimes they're a little bit longer term, but they are coming.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jim, I'll direct this next one to you. Path to Newark. So as part of the Better Path campaign, there was over 8,000 people, 19 electeds that called for the path extension to Newark that was previously studied and funded and was part of the Port Authority's robust capital program back in 2017 to 2026. But in 2023, this project was deferred, and 2025 was removed from the capital program altogether. Yet, of course, we know thousands of residents of Hudson and Essex County still use the airport, and they have to rely on car transportation to reach it. So in your view, what would it take to bring Newark Airport into the 21st century and provide a one-seat ride to cities on both sides of the Hudson? And what funding sources would support those efforts?
I got the easy one. So I've been living around the path extension to Newark since I moved from engineering into Newark Airport in 2004. When we were studying, the new Newark Airport, we had to look at, not just what the operation was then, but how do you look forward? So we've been looking at this challenge since I arrived in 2004. It's a really complex issue. The right-of-way is on the wrong side of the airport, the service to the airport, and this second point is not one that's unique to Newark. If you look at Dulles or any airports that have a rail connection, there's usually a less frequent rail connection to the airport, and then you either have to get on a bus or you have to have a separate air train. So you see people movers of some sort at most airports to keep up with the interterminal connection frequencies. We had studied that way back in when we first started to look at Newark Airport. The difference in cost, off the top of my head, so we can get real numbers, but when we looked at the two alternatives to build a new Terminal A, which I think at the time was estimated at like $1.5 billion. The alternative that brought the PATH train onto the system was at least triple that. And since then, the cost of mega projects has doubled, tripled. So when you look at the history, we tried again, as you mentioned. We put $1 billion in the capital plan, but it actually said 1.7, hoping that we would get some kind of a grant for the $700 million. Then we went out for bid for Terminal A. I think it was the air train, had those cost explosions on the mega projects. So we needed to find a way to push forward our top two priorities at the time, which was getting a new Terminal A and doing the planning on the air train. So that's when we had to, unfortunately, pull the capital from the path extension to fund some of those shortfalls. But what we did do is we worked hard to unravel a challenge that we had when we put the NEC station in. And one of the main objectives, along with that one-seat ride, was to open up the station to get access to the local communities. People who work at the airport could see the air train station. They couldn't get access to it. So we were able to get, I think it was $150 million or so, to put a new station on the west side of the NEC rail that now provides access to Elizabeth and Newark. So that community now not only gets access to the airport, but also gets access to New Jersey Transit and Amtrak to continue either north or south into the city or points south as far as Washington, D.C. So, that's a small win, some of the scope. When we designed that station, we left room for the path extension to Newark. So there's a, not to preclude option that we built. In other words, we left a space where the path train could come in, and then they could take advantage of the connector extension that we put in as, so we sized it for that future traffic when and if we're able to get that. So I add the if to that because this is a really challenging project. When we look at the overall path capital needs, like anyone managing a home budget, you try to figure out where you get the biggest bang for your buck. So what you've seen is the new $3 billion investment recently in new trains, the controls, automatic control system, the stabilization, which is what we kind of called informally the first work we did, the track work we did under Path Forward, because we had, when I took this job, we were under 26 slow speed orders. So when the conditions of the track gets to a certain point, the only way to keep the travelers safe is to reduce the speed to 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, depending on what the condition is. And we had 26 of those. So we needed to go and first stabilize that to eliminate the delays from the slow speed orders, and that's where we found the dollars for the Path Forward system. We also did some other work on the aging vehicle fleet. So, and then we did a bunch of stations over the years, adding the new head houses at Harrison, the Hoboken station. I think we've done Grove, Exchange, and we're working next on Newport. So, that's the kind of stuff that you see in front that's public facing. What we also need to do is a whole new redo of the electrical distribution, which is also beyond its useful life. So I just toured one of our Central Substation 2 in the heart of Jersey City, building a brand new substation, which also then provides that electrical reliability. So it's all about choices. So we're going to continue, as we do with all our infrastructure, to look forward. We're in this for the long haul. We've been around over 100 years, and we have to think about not just the next 20, we have to look at the next 50 and the next 100 years. So that path extension to Newark is still alive in our view. So we do, whenever we do planning at Newark or we do planning at Path, that's one of the considerations that we look to find the capital for.
Thank you for that answer. Speaking of maintenance and upgrades, we're coming out of a successful, I think, Path Forward program where there was an intensive rehabilitation and there's a lot of outreach from that program, a lot of outreach to riders, especially for some of the impactful work that was done, such as in Hoboken where the station was closed for a month. I was hoping you could speak a little bit to that, Raisha, maybe Rebecca. What are some of the challenges of maintaining a system that's over 100 years old, operates 24/7, and what are some of your plans for doing those maintenance? Have you thought about regular maintenance closures or things that people can plan around as you schedule out and move forward with needed maintenance work?
I can take the maintenance aspect, and Rebecca can take care of the messaging and the plans to push that out as soon as we know it. So I think you said it best. We are 118 years old. We're very unique in that we're one of very few heavy rail rapid transit systems that actually operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when you have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, you have to find an opportunity to do maintenance. With that said, our physical layout makes it quite challenging. We typically have 2 tracks, and on those tracks you have 4 service lines that overlap each other. So that means that you have 1 track that goes east and pretty much 1 track that goes west. When it comes to maintenance on either of those tracks, we don't have the ability to run around it. So that's where we look at what does our ridership tell us. We strategically plan our maintenance at windows that have least impact to our passengers. So that's when you look at the overnights and you'll see we have a 40-minute headway. The 40-minute headway allows our maintenance teams to go out and do the federally mandated maintenance walks on our system. And for that reason, that's how we're able to stay reliable and safe. With that said, the other thing that I'd like to point out is the intentions around planning. Oftentimes, the decisions that come with any kind of service outages, it's all the stakeholders sitting at the table. We make the decisions with the customers at the front end, but ultimately all decisions are mirrored around that safety aspect, but they are intentional. So I'll hand it over to Rebecca just to talk about how we, once that decision has been made, how we push that message out.
Thanks, Raisha. So as Raisha said, when we have planned closures, we do strive to have a good balance between giving ample and early notice and also reiterating that notice once we come within, a month or a few weeks of the closure. We do find that when we give a lot of notice, and for example, with the Hoboken closure in February, we came out at the end of October to give public that notice. And then with our most recent closures, the last of which is happening right now, we gave notice in January for closures on the weekends, a handful of them that were happening end of February, March, and April. So we'll go out with an initial notice. We kind of take a two-prong approach. We call it the hum and shout approach. So for anyone who planning that far in advance is important, we've given the notice out there, but we find we don't get a lot of engagement. A lot of customers, they'll say, okay, something's happening. It's not happening for a few months. I have some time. Maybe it doesn't affect me. And then we'll come with the shall approach, which is in the month and the few weeks leading up to the closure. That's where you'll see amplified signage in the stations. You'll see more e-blasts, path alerts, social media, really making sure that people know this is coming. And then you'll have even agents and ambassadors in the station, depending on the closure, to make sure that customers are aware. And that we have found works really well. So again, we try to plan and give multiple months of notice for those who it's important to have that information that early. And then for customers who may know that it's happening, but they haven't quite figured out how or if it's going to impact them, that's when we're coming back again in those weeks before, really shouting it at you. And I can tell you, I was out there in the station when we closed Hoboken, and it was very nice to see in the days leading up to that closure when we were out there with our megaphones. I think I lost my voice, but everyone was just giving us rolling their eyes or the thumbs up, yes, we know it's happening, which was great for us because it meant our messaging was getting out there. We were able to reach a lot of our riders right in the station where you are. And we'll continue to take that prong approach. And again, if you have feedback for how best to message to your channels or your networks, please give that to us through our surveys, through our app feedback form, through WhatsApp or our social media channels.
Thank you. Budget, money, the hard stuff. Port Authority is a big organization, and the PATH is about 13% of the operating budget. And it only gets about less than 7% of the capital plan budget of the Port Authority. In 2024, it was 15% of the operating budget, as opposed to now where it's 13%. So what would it take to increase the PATH share of the Port Authority's overall budget? And Jim, I think it's a hard question, so I'll give it to you again.
Excellent.
They're also giving it to Jim because they were worried we were going to say, yes, what does it take to increase PATH's budget?
Yeah, believe me, these three always ask for more money every day. I talked about balance. One of the great things about the Port Authority and our 5-line businesses is that there's opportunities in one when there's, challenges in another. So, having gone through the capital plan, we really looked hard at each of the line businesses and what they need. And they're all under different kinds of pressures based on, the current state of, where they are in their different developments. So we use multiple strategies to try to optimize the capital capacity that we have. So sometimes that's public-private partnership. Sometimes it's pursuing grants. And then it's really, we go through a comprehensive, we have a very strong in-house engineering department where we sit with them and we rank state of good repair, and not just state of good repair, but the impact of this particular system that we are working on. So we go through a robust prioritization. And that's what we did. I'm pretty happy with what we did and what we achieved in the capital plan, but $45 billion over 10 years. That doesn't include when we're able to get private investment. So the good news also is that once that's over, we start figuring out how to get the things that didn't make it in the capital plan into the capital plan. So that's if we could find new revenue sources that create capacity, if we can find some way to work with a partnership, in terms of private investment, if we can come up with innovative ways to reduce our operating costs using technology, if we can find better ways to deliver projects, so if you're spending $10 million, if you can figure out a way to deliver it for $5 million, all of those things are the tools that we need to do. But the challenge with PATH is also what Raisha said. There's only so many places that we can take out of service at a time. One of the things we wanted to do is get the PATH Forward in, deliver this service, so that you get the benefit of that while we figure out the next big move, which the ultra big move will be renovating the uptown under river tunnels. That's going to take either many years of weekend closures or year plus of, just shorter, more painful closure, but more efficient construction. So that's kind of what we're planning next. And as I said before, we'll look for more opportunities. We're looking for doing some public-private investigations around Journal Square as a potential option. So we did put some planning dollars in there, so we use those planning dollars to look for those opportunities. Planning is not just about engineering, it's about financial analysis and how to fund different initiatives.
Thank you, Jim. Fare evasion. PATH fares or fare box revenue is just a small portion of the funding, puzzle. But what work is being done to help reduce fare evasion and ensure that all riders are ticketed riders?
I'll take this one. So PATH is unique as a transit agency because we don't get any external dedicated funding sources. The Port Authority operates PATH as a public service, and it costs over $400 million a year. Now, fares help us recover a portion of that, and fares are important in order to be able to offer the improvements, such as the Every Line, Every Day improvements that are going to be rolled out. For fare evasion, we have spent a lot of time over the past few years. We believe everyone should pay their fair share, understanding really two things. One is, what does fare evasion look like on PATH? How often is it happening? How is it happening? Where is it happening? And what is that cumulative impact to our revenue? And then two, what can we do to help deter fare evasion? To the first point, really, we are working to understand what fare evasion still looks like on our system. We don't have a lot of good data right now to fully flush out those hard numbers. We have been working to upgrade cameras, however, in the system so that they're more clear, they're better positioned to help look at the turnstiles so that we can understand what fare evasion looks like, how often it's happening on PATH, and we'll continue to scale that up. But most of our data is actually just a handful of hours of manual counts at each station, which is a lot of work. A lot of our stations have multiple cameras, as much as 10, that you have to review, and with someone manually reviewing CCTV footage and trying to count fare evasion, which is challenging because the cameras are old, they don't always have good angles. And also, it's about 7 to 10 hours worth of work then to get 1 hour's worth of fare evasion data at one station. So we take the data that we have and we're continuing to scale that up to understand the impacts. But we don't need perfect numbers to try to start deterring fare evasion. So we have worked over the last few years on several pilots that we'll also be looking to scale up to help deter it. And part of that goes to understanding what's motivating people to fare evade. You have your opportunistic fare evaders. Maybe they would have paid, maybe they could pay, maybe they even had their tap card or their mobile device out to pay, but then they see the ADA gate opened, which they're very old. We do know most of our fare evasion happens through our ADA gates, and maybe 1 or 2 people walk through, and then others walk through. So then that would-be paying passenger, takes that opportunity to also fare evade. Then you have your frustrated fare evaders. Maybe they tried to pay, maybe the turnstile ate their ticket, or it wasn't working with their credit card, so then they fare evaded, because they felt they didn't have a choice. And then you have your determined fare evaders, which to them the priority is not paying the fare, so they will change their behavior, they'll change their travel pattern in order to avoid doing so. And so we really try to tailor the interventions we're taking to suit each type of those fare evaders by how they're motivated. So a big success we have found in helping to deter fare evasion is putting PATH staff out in the fare zones, our customer service staff especially. We call them our passenger information agents. They wear the red. Our data has shown that having them out there, they're making eye contact with riders, they're welcoming you, they're there to help if you have trouble paying your fare. Does help to deter fare evaders. Not 100%, but it does make a big impact. We're also getting new ADA gates. You'll see the first new ADA gate roll out at World Trade Center very soon, and they will be replaced system-wide. So that should, again, help deter fare evasion and not get rid of it 100%. And then, we partner with PAPD. We can use the data points that we have to help inform where PAPD can be around our system. Again, they can't be everywhere at once, but where we have targeted pockets of high fare evasion, they can go and help deter it. Our studies show, again, just having police presence in the station helps deter fare evaders. And then we have most recently tried a few other interventions at select stations. We're trying, similar to the MTA, and we talk very closely with our sister agencies to make some physical modifications to our non-ADA turnstiles, our prong gates. So, we have put a new sprocket in to try to prevent the gates from being able to backcock so you can shimmy through. That's a popular way people fare evade. We've also tried to put an alarm. This is one of our earliest prototypes on the ADA gate, so if you've gone through and you force the gate open, you might have that alarm sounding that's saying, you didn't stop, you didn't pay your fare. And we're also looking at some sort of metal fin that would be on top of the turnstiles, again, to help prevent jumping. Now, what all of our transit agency sisters agree on, and we agree too, is there's no one silver bullet. What we see is we will tackle fare evasion in one way, and then we will see the other methods of fare evasion kind of go up a little bit to counteract that. So we take steps, we kind of circle a little bit closer to the impacts, and then where we're seeing those pilots are successful, we will again be looking to scale them up. And in the meantime, we are trying to understand and get better data to understand truly what fare evasion's impact is on PATH. But definitely stay tuned for those new ADA gates.
Thank you. So I think we may have time for one more question, maybe 2, but probably 1. So let's talk about Journal Square, since we're here. We're right by it. Journal Square is 50 years old. It's starting to show its age. It is the center of a booming neighborhood with huge growth around it. Yet there's crowding at the stairs and escalators, both to the platforms and circulating. And it also serves as a major bus terminal, right? I think it's the 3rd largest bus terminal of the Port Authority, and certainly the one that has not yet have plans for kind of rework and redevelopment. So what are the long-term plans for the Port Authority for this important transportation asset in the middle of our booming neighborhood? Jim, hard questions.
Okay. So I think I mentioned we put some dollars to study this. We'd like to work with whoever, developers, the municipality, anyone who can try to help to renovate this aged facility. I think people have mentioned our structure doesn't have it so that, we don't get, we can't implement independently a development fee for developers. So, but that's not to say that it would be great if we could, but even if we can't, then it's not to say that we can't partner with developers in terms of maybe they profit from overbuild on top of our facility where we have air rights. Things like that. So we put aside dollars to study that. We have to do major work in Journal Square to put more rail down to be able to stage the longer trains so that Raisha can deploy them more efficiently. We're looking at opportunities to see if we can add another rail so that someone could go around the two that we have in that high-density area. So there's our real estate folks are working with PATH folks who have been trying to figure this out for a long time. GoCore, our government and community affairs folks are working with local electeds. And I think I'm hopeful that with all of the benefits that you all point out, I took a picture when I was stuck in traffic and it showed all of these monstrous towers around the little Journal Square Transportation Center. And it just was a picture of, all of that transit-oriented development around a 118-year-old system, yet somehow that activity didn't compensate for the improvements that are needed to the PATH system, the very thing that created the value. So if we could work together with different partners to try to, figure out how to make the Journal Square transportation, the visually and experiential-wise, the centerpiece of all of that transit-oriented development, that's one of our biggest strategic goals. Our chairman, Kevin O'Toole, is constantly on us to look at that. There's a lot of interest coming from our chairman, our executive director. So we're really, kind of all in on this. It's kind of a gang tackle. Our chief development officer and the real estate group, we did the partnership with move Tower 2 at World Trade Center. So if we can figure that out, and that's a priority for us, that I think that would be the best opportunity to, with a little bit coming from multiple sources to achieve that really iconic outcome that we're all desiring.
Amazing. Thank you. I think we are up at time, but if everyone could please join me in a big thank you to our really fantastic panel for sharing their time today. So thank you. So Assemblywoman Brennan.